Hello everyone, and welcome to the ICO's Grants Programme webinar. My name is Hannah Smith. I am the Senior Digital Communications Officer here at the ICO. Joining me today is Lynne Currie, our Head of Innovation, and Rob McCombe, Senior Policy Officer and Grants Programme Expert. So hello to you both.
Hello.
Hello.
Last week we opened the third round of bids for the Grants Programme. At the same time as this, we've launched our new website portal, which contains all the information people listening will need to apply, as well as information about all our previously funded projects. If you want to take a look at this, it can be found at ico.org.uk/grants2020. Today's webinar is going to consist of two parts. We're going to firstly hear from Lynne, who's going to talk us through the strategic aims of the Grants Programme and why it's such an important work stream for us here at the ICO. I'll then hand over to Rob, and he's going to talk us through more of the detail around the assessment process and what will be needed and expected of successful recipients. We will be answering questions at the end of the webinar, so if you have anything you wish to ask, please email us at icograntsprogramme@ico.org.uk, or you can tweet us at ICOnews. We'll try and get through as many questions as we can, but don't worry if your question isn't answered, as we'll be putting together a post-webinar document which answers the more frequent or complex questions. Okay, so I will stop going on and I'll hand over to Lynne.
Thanks, Hannah. So we have been running a grants programme at the ICO since 2017, and as Hannah said, this is the launch of the third round of grants. The first two rounds have funded 4 projects each, and they've covered issues like anonymisation, sharing patients' data, and understanding children's privacy. So before we go into detail, I just want to explain a bit about why we run the grants programme. And one of our aims in the innovation department is to stimulate innovation. We also check it and facilitate it and support it, but the grants programme is here to help push and drive innovation in the area of privacy. So we use it to contribute towards that goal by encouraging innovative research in emerging and high-profile issues in a way that will stimulate expertise, will promote collaboration, and will raise public awareness and promote best practice in privacy and data protection. And to make sure that we can do that, we've broken this down into a set of objectives covering how we want the programme to work and what we aim to achieve. So first of all, we want to support and encourage research and privacy enhancing solution in areas where there's a significant data protection risk, and to focus on projects that will make a real difference to the UK public. So in summary, we want the projects to be meaningful and we want them to have an impact. On top of that, we want to improve understanding. We want to know more about how individuals view privacy issues, how they interact with new technologies, and how we can use what comes out of that understanding to promote better public awareness. And we will use the outcomes of the programme to increase awareness of privacy enhancing solutions with data controllers across the UK, as well as promoting uptake and application of the research results by relevant stakeholders, and that includes policymakers. So for that reason, all the outcomes of the research that we support need to be open source. Finally, all of this should contribute to developing existing privacy research capacity in academic and not-for-profit sectors. So now I want to expand a bit on how the grants programme fits with the work of the ICO as a whole. We have an information rights strategic plan which sets out the ICO's 6 strategic goals, and all the work we do should contribute to one or more of these goals. Now, each of these goals is set out in detail in the plan, and that's available on our website. And I would encourage anyone considering submitting an application to read this before you formulate your proposals, so you can be clear on how your project will contribute to one or more of our aims. It would also be worthwhile looking at some of the projects that we've supported in the past to see how they fit with one or more of our strategic goals. And I'm just going to focus briefly on the goals that are particularly relevant to this call for our proposals. First of all, Goal 1 in our strategic plan is to increase the public's trust and confidence in how data is used and made available. So multiple surveys have told us and illustrated that the public have little trust in how their information is used by organisations. So projects that aim to find ways to increase public's trust and raise their confidence are welcome. For example, your project might aim to educate either the public or organisations on rights and obligations in relation to data protection or to privacy. You might have a proposal for an app to check compliance or a tool to increase the public's awareness of their rights or their understanding of how their data is used in certain circumstances. If you wanted to look at some past examples, projects carried out by ORG and Connection in previous rounds of this grants programme have provided good examples of how this work can contribute. Goal 2 of our strategic plan is to improve the standards of information rights through clear, inspiring and targeted engagement and influence. So if your project looks to identify new risks to information rights, for example through emerging technologies, and to offer real and practical solutions for the public or for organisations, then it might address this goal. Oxford University's work on the Internet of Things is a good example of a project that we've supported in this area in the past. And goal 4. This says that we want to stay relevant, provide excellent public service and, crucially, keep abreast of evolving technology. So we're especially interested in projects that provide innovative and technological solutions to new and emerging challenges. This could be on things like big data, biometrics or AI. The PhD work on genomics is a good example of a project that we've supported looking at a current and challenging emerging area. And that brings me on to the topics that we're particularly interested in for this round of projects. Following on from last year's grants call, we remain interested in areas such as children's data, AI and biometric data. In particular, we're interested in data protection issues and solutions for vulnerable adults and communities, artificial intelligence, big data and machine learning, and in particular this can involve research that would support effective transparency or verifiable audit trails. We're also interested in data protection safeguards for the ethical use of emerging biometric and facial recognition technology, and that could be both in the private and or the public sector. We would very much encourage proposals to look at children's data and privacy, including solutions that support our age-appropriate design code. And finally, we're interested in tools and techniques to minimise intrusion and reduce risk when sharing personal data. Now, I should emphasise that this isn't an exhaustive list and it's not an exclusive list, and we're happy to consider proposals for other projects, so please don't be put off by that. I hope I've given a high-level overview of what we're looking for, and I'm going to hand over to Rob now to delve a little bit more into the detail.
Brilliant, thank you, Lynn. I'll pick up and carry on from there. So I think we'll begin with perhaps some of the key questions. First of which is, what is the range of the awards available through the grants programme? As you can see here, we're offering between £20,000 and £100,000 to applicants. That's there and can be paid in either pounds or in local currency if you're applying from outside the UK. Overall, we've got something in the region of £1 million to spend across the lifetime of the grants programme, and that's emerging over 4 phases. So please note, when we see this application for money, we will be looking for evidence of detailed costings. It's more than just the headline sum. We'll be looking for a breakdown of how and where the money will be used. I'll come back to this and make a few more points of that in a little while. The other key part of information that I wanted to get across right now is the closing date. It's the 10th of March and the closing time is 5 p.m. I've just got to emphasise this now. This closing date is final. We won't be able to accept any applications that come to us after this date, I'm afraid. So do please make a note of that, and please make sure you do get your application into us before that date. So with those bits out of the way, what are we looking for with the key outcomes? Well, As Lynne's already pointed out, the aim of the grants programme is to stimulate research and innovation in the fields of privacy and data protection. Now, because these grants are funded using public money, it is absolutely essential that there is a clear and direct benefit to the UK public. Now, this can be indirectly by finding ways of helping organisations comply with UK data protection and privacy laws, or more directly by helping individuals better understand their rights. A very good example of this that Lynne's mentioned earlier is, of course, Open Rights Group fintech tool that seeks to connect people to the right point of contact within the financial technology sector, whether it's banking or insurance, and help them implement their data rights, whether it's access to information, correction, or raising a further issue as to how they feel their information is being handled. Now, this may already give you a clue that when you're engaging with the public in this manner, it might be through a tool, an app, a report, a workshop, a citizens' jury system. There's lots of options out there, and we've seen a really wide variety, and we're always open to taking different approaches in engaging in an imaginative and innovative fashion. Other ways to approach this may focus on improving practice in a particular sector or around a particular issue or means of handling personal data. But what I do want to emphasise here is it doesn't mean that your project has to be on a national scale. You don't need to be a national body or a global organisation to apply to us. What we're looking for is something that's innovative and practical. And we do appreciate that not everyone's got the resources to work on a national or larger scale, but we still do want to hear from you. If you're engaging with a vulnerable section of society or looking at a really tricky issue, we want to hear from you, particularly if your proposed outputs have the means to scale up and across into either a national basis or across multiple sectors. A really good example of this is Connection at St Martin's in the Fields project, where they're working with homeless individuals within London to highlight their data rights and how their information is used. While it's very focused in a small geographical area, it's got fantastic potential to roll out across the country at a later date. And I think, as I've already begun to make clear, the grants are about linking innovation to practical outcomes. This might be through research into new technologies and their implications for data protection. It might be understanding how the public are using their rights under GDPR or what their needs are. But any proposal needs to bring something new to the programme. Essentially, we're looking for far more than a repackaging of existing ICO guidance on data protection. Now, when you make your application, think about what steps you're going to take to enable your project to achieve this outcome. As part of the project, we'll be looking for people to provide regular updates on how they're working towards these outputs, and that will form a key part of our engagement with the grant recipients. Now, last but not least is just to say that the projects we're looking to support should be completed within 12 months. We're looking for a focused engagement with a particular problem rather than a longer term and more speculative research approach. So, as well as those key outcomes, we're also looking for all the project outputs to be open source. As a UK regulator, we're tasked with promoting good practice, and grant recipients will have to be willing to share project outcomes and results with the public, and this can be done by making them available under the various open source platforms, whether it's the Open Government Licence or Creative Commons. This is a fundamental part of the grants programme, and it's one that every grant recipient must be willing to cooperate with. I just want to clarify that this isn't to say that in the long term grants outputs can't be used in a commercial fashion, but it does mean that the initial output, as agreed, must meet these open source standards, so that all other members of the public and other organisations can look at the work that's been done and think about how they may use the hard work and the outputs that have been created. So, moving on to the detail, the assessment criteria. What are we looking for from a good application? Well, first and foremost, we've got the overall quality. We're looking for high quality proposals that demonstrate how your solution would work in practice. Are you clearly explaining the purpose and the need of your project? Where does this need come from? Why does it matter? How do you see your project making a difference? Then we're also looking at relevance and timeliness. And here we're coming back to those key topics that Lynne's mentioned. It ties in with our information strategic rights plan and the key areas that we're really keen to engage with. Is it relevant to current challenges and the strategic assessments that we're making? However, as Lynne's also noted, these aren't exclusive. We are willing to consider other areas. After all, this is our chance to open up to the research community and ask them what they see going on, what they're aware of, and what they think really matters. So if you do think you have an alternative idea that would really interest us, please bring it to us. Then we're also looking at feasibility. Does the application make it clear how this proposal would be delivered? It might be a great idea, but what are the details on how it would be put together, on how it would be pursued, on how those outputs would be made practical and delivered within the timescale? Does your organisation have a history of delivering projects like this? And if not, where is that knowledge and expertise going to come from? Then we're looking at value for money. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be looking for realistic budgeting. We're not looking just for the headline sum, but also how it's likely to be spent. We appreciate that costings will shift. Projects will change as they develop. Your findings may dictate you do something differently. You may have staff turnover or illness that affects what you do and when you do it. We're able to discuss that, but we will expect people to have made all reasonable attempts to put a detailed costing forward when they put an application together. And then finally, we're back to the outcomes and benefits. And again, this really should be an integral part of your project. If you think you've seen an area, an issue, or a sector that really needs addressing, this is your chance to say why that needs doing and how your project and outputs will improve that situation. Where will it lead? Who might use it? Those are both key questions that we'd really like to see you set out for us when we get your application. So who are we looking for applications from? Well, as it says here, a really wide selection of people. It can include civil society, trade associations, academics and universities, any organisation with a clear commitment to public benefit outcomes, and that includes, in the above, all UK-based and international organisations. As we noted in the key outputs, whatever you're suggesting must be of direct benefit to the UK public, but this doesn't mean it can't also apply to EU citizens or even global communities. Providing the UK public stands to benefit, we're willing to consider and discuss a huge range of topics and approaches. So if you're based outside the UK, or if you feel your project has application well beyond the scope of the UK, again, send us an application, bring us an idea. With regards to actually completing the application form, one of the earliest sections you'll see is the lead applicant responsible for the project. This will be the person doing the majority of the work. We're looking for the individual who will form the key contact point with the ICO as the project develops. It may not be the most senior person in your organisation, but it will be the person conducting the day-to-day work, able to answer questions, whether it's to do with expenses, resources, or technical questions on the actual output or the research being conducted. Now, if you're making an application that's a joint one between a couple of organisations, say for instance a university and a commercial enterprise, then you can have two lead applicants. That's not a problem. What we're looking for here is simply the information so we can stay in clear contact and answer any questions we might have, and equally that you have a clear point of contact for us, so that if you've got questions, queries or issues you want to raise, you can quickly and easily resolve those. So if you do have joint lead applicants, please make that clear on the form and we can work with that I'd also note that when we receive the applications, we are required to carry out due diligence checks on grant recipients. This is because we run the grants programme as part of the government's functional grant standards that was set up and organised by the Cabinet Office. Because of this, we are expected to conduct all financial and basic due diligence checks. Now, Section 1 on the application form sets out all of the information that we require. Again, we must have this. This isn't optional. This is all key information that we need. So please make sure you've done a thorough job of checking that you either provide us with copies of the documentation or clear links where we can reach this information. If your organisation is based outside the UK, please provide your country's equivalent of the company registration number or other applicable reference, such as a university ID. If we don't get this information, it is likely to result in a delay. Next up is your proposal summary. Now, most of the application form is quite free form, but this proposal is limited to 500 words, and we are quite strict about this. This, for want of a better term, is the elevator pitch. It's short, it's punchy, it gets across your key ideas and messages for what you want to do. It's our first chance to really engage with the idea you want to get across. So keep to that limit and get the key ideas across quickly and effectively. If you've got further detail that you want to go to in other areas, there are later sections in the application form where you can do that. Now, as I've noted earlier, we are looking for projects that can run within 12 months from the payment of the first grant instalment. Now, if you feel that there are exceptional circumstances and you may need a slightly longer period of time, such as 13 or 14 months, we may consider this, but this will only be under exceptional circumstances. So again, do make that very clear. The other things we will be looking for once we get past the summary proposal are details of your methodology. How are you looking to gather your information and then deliver the outputs? Will you be working from secondary literature? Will you be conducting primary research with members of the public or with industry? This is your chance to really set it out and make it clear how that will feed into your workflow. And this then will also in turn lead to the key milestones. What will you be delivering and when across the course of the year? We don't have a particular format that we have to see, but we do expect clarity so we can understand what we should be getting and at what stage. We will have interim reports that we'll require from you, and it may be that you'll have additional work you want to submit at the same time, but equally you may wish to weight your work towards the end of the project. As you set this out, please make it clear how you see the benefits of this proposed approach. So, moving on. As Lynne's already mentioned, we've already got details of supported projects up on the ICO's webpage. Please do go and have a look. These are a really fantastic source. First and foremost, in their own right, they're excellent projects with some really clever, well thought through ideas and outputs that have had already a big impact on the UK public and the way their data is used and critically considered. Now, in the first round, we've had a project from the Open Rights Group that includes machine-readable privacy notices in banking insurance that I've already discussed. We've also got London School of Economics Data Privacy Skills for Children Toolkit that undertook some fantastic engagement with classrooms and children to understand how children think about their privacy, how they use the internet, and how we think about data protection well beyond the immediate concerns of e-safety. Then we've got the work undertaken by Teesside University looking at the development of a privacy tool and the sharing of patient healthcare records across healthcare professionals. Now, as another regional case, this one was very much focused on the NHS in the North East, but again, looking at techniques, approaches and criticisms that could be applied across the wider health sector. Then our last one from the first round of grants was Imperial College's Project Harpo that looked at creating a tool to better understand how people's information was anonymised, and just how effective this was at protecting people's privacy. Then of course we've got 4 projects currently underway. These are being run as part of our Phase 2 projects. Now this includes of course data rights for homeless individuals. We've also got Cardiff University's training programme for researchers working with routinely collected data. We've got the University of Oxford's research on privacy by design in smart homes. And then finally, but far from least, we've got PHG's Foundation's research on the impact of data protection laws on genomic technologies. So hopefully these 8 projects give you a really good sense of just how broad the approach of the grants programme is. We're not looking to pursue a single path here, we're simply looking for outstanding ideas and innovative techniques. So I hope those provide some inspiration, and at that point I will say thank you very much for listening to us. We hope it's been of some help, and I'm now going to hand back across to Hannah and we'll take some questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, very informative. Okay, so we have a few questions. I think this one's probably best answered by you, Rob, and it's quite a specific one from a for-profit tech startup. They're focused on helping businesses understand and control their data, but they wanted to know if they would be eligible to apply for the grant in order to help them adapt the tech and make it accessible for consumers.
Thanks, Hannah. That's a good question. Now, fundamentally, the ICO is certainly interested in means of appropriately and safely sharing personal data. I think a key question to answer is one we've already covered. All the outputs will have to be open source. As a UK regulator, we're not able to support commercial outcomes. Once the ICO's own project has completed, then by all means information can be used to deliver a product or a service. Now, if you think you've got an idea and you're a private organisation and you're able to do this, then we're very willing to help you and to listen to your idea. What we can't do though is support a commercial output. So have a think, see how that might work for your organisation, and then we're willing to listen.
Great, thank you. I think maybe you touched upon this when you were talking, because you did mention that people could apply internationally. This came through from a higher education institution in Ireland asking if European and international applications are eligible. So I'm just wondering if there are any restrictions on that, and yes, if people from Europe and internationally can apply.
Certainly, we'd really encourage it. As mentioned before, providing it's also of direct benefit to the UK public, we're willing to look at ideas. Now, given the broad span of GDPR, there's an enormous amount of coverage across Europe. While there can occasionally be some differences as we move towards specific derogations between countries, that's unlikely to be the focus of the majority of applications. So providing you can clearly show and demonstrate how your project will benefit the UK as well as other areas, then yes, we'd be really interested to hear from you.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Rob. This is a clarification question based on something we've put out on the website, where we've said that we won't be funding fellowships, and someone just wants some clarification on what we mean by fellowships. So do we mean independent researchers or non-tenured research staff?
Right, okay, slightly trickier one here, so I'll give it a shot. What we mean by that is we can't fund fellowships as an entity. So for instance, if somebody came to us saying that they wanted to set up a research fellowship at an academic institution to spend a year or two researching in a very broad and not very defined research area, that's not something we'd be able to do. If you came to us with a specific project, however, saying that you're a research fellow or independent researcher who wants to work on that specified project, we're very happy. That's not a problem. What is needed is the specific output. We generally find that fellowships don't tend to work towards a single output within the span of a year, which is why they're not something that we can fund indirectly through the grants. But that doesn't mean that research fellows themselves can't participate.
Thank you very much. A very specific question now. Can people apply if they have applied for the previous 2 phases?
Yes, that's no barrier at all. We're always willing to hear from previous applicants. Simply because you've been unsuccessful at a previous time doesn't mean you wouldn't be this time. Over the previous years, we've had some really high standards of applications. So simply because we weren't able to pursue your idea then doesn't mean that either A, we may not listen to it this time, or B, if you have a different idea that you want to come to us with. So please do feel free.
Thank you very much. Nice and clear. Okay, question just hot off the press. If we were to apply for a sum and you wanted to award us less for that specific project, can that happen? Or if the ICO wants to award less, will it just reject the whole proposal?
I think that might depend on the costings that were included within the proposal. So if there was something that we felt wasn't relevant to the delivery of the proposal, we might come back with a question on how the proposal itself would be delivered, and whether the outputs would still be the same without that element of the costing. What we wouldn't do, and I think Rob can correct me if I'm wrong, is simply say, no, you can only have 2/3 of that, for example.
Yes. So there can be conversations, but it has to be mutually agreed.
Yeah, and specific.
Yeah.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. If it's something we feel we need to discuss, then we will.
Thank you very much. Another one from another startup company here, asking if they would qualify for a grant with a project. So they've given an example. The aim of their project is to create public understanding of, an understanding with the public of how their personal information is compiled and used in order to put them in greater control of that information. Their project would aim to create a database that acts as personal information library for the individual so that they can monitor their data and combat any misuse. So I guess, is that the kind of project that we're looking for? Does that kind of hit some of the key aims?
It certainly sounds like an interesting one. It's one that we'd want a good few more details on. We'd need to understand, with a project like that, how the project itself would comply with data protection laws, the GDPR. If you're looking to use people's information, who would the data controller be? How would you recognise rights and information access requests? And how would this be innovative? What is this bringing that is new? How will it help the wider public? We'd also, with projects such as that, need to understand how it would work and how it would continue to have an impact beyond the lifespan of the grants project itself. Something like that is likely to need support, so how is it seen as being financed in the long term? And this is something we will need to consider with all applications. If you're looking to use personal data, and particularly special category data, how will those people conducting the research meet the demands and obligations of all relevant legislation?
Great. Another quick question here. So Lynne, if someone has a project that they believe could be completed in 12 months, but if the project was to be a success, it may last many years, and could turn into an ongoing commercial business arm, would that be a problem? So this touches upon what we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it will be a particular problem, providing you can put boundaries around the project to show what you're going to deliver within your 12 months, and provided that everything you do is open source and available to other people to use at the end of that project. Once we're out of the picture, if you like, how that gets used is open for everybody.
Yeah.
But no, it shouldn't prevent somebody from making an application.
Yes, I think what you were saying was that the business has to make a determination as to whether that open source element of it's going to work for them, isn't it? Great. I think we've come to the end of our question section. So I think we'll wrap up there. Just to say, if people do have any further questions, the inbox is available until the end of the grants programme. Applications need to be in by 5 p.m. on the 10th of March. But between now and then, please get your questions into ICO grants programme at ico.org.uk. And we look forward to seeing what exciting initiatives come our way. Rob, Lynne, anything else to add before we close up?
I think nothing further other than you can not only trace us through the aforementioned email, phone number and webpage, you can also follow the ICO at these following social media links: YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter and Facebook. And it simply remains to say thank you again, and we look forward to receiving the applications.
Thank you.
Thank you.